Hello, everyone. This is Gilbert Gelad. I'm talking to you here from CPLSPA downtown. This is Tufts on Tax, where all your tax issues and tax questions regarding taxes and problems with taxes here with Tufts on Tax with Mr. T. Scott Tufts. You can call him at 877-647-7887. Again, that number is 647-7887 by putting an 877 at the beginning. And you can email him at stufts@cplspa.com. That's stufts@cplspa.com. Hello, Scott. How are you today?
Good to be with you.
Good to be with you too. Now, today our episode is a little different. I've been actually getting a lot of questions about people working, for example, remotely in any country. And then they're living here in any states of the United States. And this occurred a lot during the pandemic as well. So how do they deal with that? How do they deal with their taxes, and how do they file their taxes so they don't fall into problems?
All right. So first thing you want to do is ask the question, are you a resident or non-resident of the United States for purposes of paying tax here on U.S. source income? So for example...
So that's the first step.
Yeah. So first step is, let's say you got to have income to then pay tax, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's check off that you have income by which you then have to file a tax return. Let's just assume you meet some threshold of an amount. Okay. And let's assume that you've gotten paid by a U.S. company, employer. Okay. You're already then asking the question, do I or am I required to pay tax to U.S. tax authorities, the IRS, correct? Now, if you're working remotely and you're getting paid by a U.S. company, but you're outside of the U.S., right? Then you also are asking yourself, well, where are you remotely? Because wherever you are remotely, what is their tax treatment, right? So what many people don't realize is that in the United States has a worldwide income system. And what do I mean by that? It's not territorial, meaning that what stays in the border is what you get taxed on. It looks at your worldwide income as a general philosophy. So what I mean by that is, wherever you earn income from whatever source, the United States the idea is that if you're a resident of the United States, you should pay tax on that, or at least use that gross number to calculate your taxes. Now, we're not talking about a credit or some advantage, because you can start thinking, well, if I pay tax to the United States and then my home country or where I work or whatever also taxes it, is there any break that you can get so that you don't get taxed too much? And there might be a treaty between the two countries. Or there might be rules of the road that say, yeah, but you're a U.S. citizen, so therefore you pay only to the United States, and that the foreign jurisdiction would not tax you because that. Or if you're in a territory, there may be that if you're temporarily remote somewhere, they're not going to tax it. It really just gets very complicated, because
sounds like it. And that's an interesting question.
You've got to look at like where you reside. So we have a way, that there's a interesting thing that we do here, where even non-residents, if they are here more than 183 days under a 3-year rolling average, then you calculate a presence test. And basically what that means is they look back 3 years and they take 1/6 of the 3 years before, 1/3 of the 2 years before, and the amount this year. And if those three average out to more than a certain number, 183, which is or some number greater than the threshold, then what you're trying to do is pick up enough presence here that you should pay tax here. Okay. So you're like, oh, I get it. But temporary visits don't count. So like you're flying over and you land in an airport and then you pick back up and take off. Well, that's temporary. You're not here. Right.
Correct.
But if you're here for 6 months, then leave, you put 6 months, calculate those days that you're here.
That period of time
in that year. And then you do part of this calculation. So it's an equation that you would go through in determining whether you meet the residence test of being here, right? Now, that's important because if you become a resident alien, meaning that you're here more than the sufficient time period, then you'll be approached a certain way under the tax law than compared to those who are not, who are not here that enough. So, and then there's, green card, different things that are happening. But at the end of the day, your question needs more questions. Like just remoting in doesn't tell me anything. It tells me that someone's thinking, well, I'm not physically in the United States, so I pay tax. And the answer would be yes. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're going to be paying tax in the United States. But that may not mean that your income is taxable, because you may get an offsetting credit because you're paying tax to somewhere else.
Okay.
Right? Or vice versa, right? So it really is a little bit more fluid because we have credits in our country. We have exclusions where you don't have to report income twice. And then there's sometimes where the treaty doesn't cover everything and you actually may have to pay taxes here, taxes there. And then you're on top of it. Yeah, both places. Absolutely. Wow. And people that are in the international markets know that this is a difficult thing because they need to have compliance in both wherever they are physically and and then with the U.S. taxes.
So the taxes may vary depending on, like, one example, he's living in the United States and he's getting paid and working for another country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's living in that country. However, he's working for United States remotely. Exactly. So that's, it will vary the percentage of what he pays. Okay.
Right. And the U.S. employer, what about wages, withholding, Social Security taxes?
Yeah.
And then what about the other countries? Approach.
What do they have? What are their laws?
Exactly. So they would have a similar policy approaching foreigners who are in their country.
Sounds like this opens a can of worms of questions.
Taxes are like
and tax, yes,
lots of worms. But there's also the idea that this is an international tax question, right? And so therefore, for those who come and go or interact in the international markets, they need that international tax expertise and make sure that their accountants have familiarity and skill at that. And not all of them do, but you certainly want that.
Does that involve an attorney like you and a bank and an immigration attorney?
Yeah. So oftentimes for green card and folks who are dealing with the immigration process, that could be certainly dealing with the immigration attorney. But beyond that, there's certainly going to be employer issues, and that might involve an attorney as well for a green card or other such status. The employer may be involved at that point with an attorney. And then you have the overall accountants who are dealing with it that you hope have the expertise and should. And then you have the idea that someone like myself or someone with an international tax background can help deal with it. And then you've got the issue of, familiarity with some other foreign lands taxes. Yes. Are you able to handle those? So unfortunately, not an easy thing to unpack, but you've got to get around the right people. There are very highly skilled accountants who specialize in international tax and accounting matters to assist with the preparation side of the returns. Someone like myself would be more of the focus on these more complex matters that can come up. We talked about the K2, K3, which are the new forms for partnerships, where they're gathering almost anything that touches on an international front. They're making more forms be filled out so that the partnership information goes to the partners.
I see. Wow. It does involve
Another question that you said, wow, I didn't realize so complicated.
I know, yeah. And the forms, do they vary?
Yes.
Like if you're living here and working there, or vice versa?
Yeah. So each country, I'd say many or substantially all countries have a withholding system similar to ours that would withhold taxes at, from employees or pay. But if it's direct pay, maybe not. And that's why you have to know that where you're working, what are the laws there? And so if you're a company that has workers in other jurisdictions, you have to be on top of these issues. So your payroll people, your accounting people have to be on top of this, because how you fill out your W-2 information and the 1099 we talked about, even there, if you've got foreign involvements, there's special treatments there.
Wow, a lot involved in that. Now, there was a situation that you're talking about, depending on what country has what tax laws they require. Now, a country like, for example, Saudi Arabia, and they don't have taxes. They don't tax a lot of things, or maybe they implement that in their prices. I don't know. But how do they deal with something like that? So
if it's a country that has a treaty with us, I'm not recalling whether Saudi Arabia does, but the point being that if they're outside of our tax system, many of the countries that before 2008 or so were tax havens or perceived to be off the grid of the international markets of treaties and whatnot and conventions. Many of those thought that's where the tax havens were. People would put their money in these countries that did not have a tax at all. And so the question you might be raising is, if we have a worldwide tax system, we're expecting to know about it. Well, one of the easy questions is, you're asked on your tax form, do you have a foreign bank account or a signature authority over a foreign bank account? It may not be in your name, but you have authority over it. Yeah. You have to answer yes, or else you could have criminal exposure for answering no that you don't when you do.
So that's interesting that they say you have authority over it.
Exactly. So let's say that I get $5 million and I put it in your name. But I have, we put it in some Caribbean island, and I have signature authority over it. Wink, right? or I have some signature authority over it, but it's in your name. My name's nowhere to be found on it, other than I can sign or I have some authority over the account.
But still, since you have authority,
then if I put no on my tax form. Then I'm in serious trouble because I've lied, right?
And they can discover that easily.
So then the question is, and the reason they do that is because for exactly the way I set that up, I may put an account in your name to conceal it from anyone, correct?
Yeah.
But yet you and I have an understanding. So what a lot of things that happen in the offshore world way back when was that you would have a friend in the foreign land who you'd pay them money and they would be a director, right? And they would,
whatever you call it.
Right, or whatever. And then they would, your name would not be anywhere to be found on the account.
Interesting.
And that way, and then if that director was approached by U.S. authorities, right? That person would say, hey, I know nothing. Right. And
that's some shady business.
Exactly. Right? But you think about it, how else are you going to shield those assets from tax? So you've almost got to remove yourself from it, because your question is going to be, well, you had an offshore trust, right? Well, who's the trustee? Somebody that doesn't know you, right? And then who's the beneficiary of that trust? Well, between you and that guy or that person, you are. It's ultimately yours, but you're not going to admit that. So this offshore planning became a real problem for the IRS. When President Obama was in place and they kind of changed the way things were done on a worldwide basis, many of these countries were told that in order to be kind of involved economically and have policies, they had to be part of the system. So many of them then had to come forward. It became more transparent. Now you have a problem because you have those accounts. You previously didn't disclose them. Now you've got to disclose them. What happens then?
Wow.
And so I think but that's a good point, Gilbert. I think the thing to understand about our tax system is, you look at it as a standpoint as times can change. So today's tax rate of X or today's tax law of Y can change, right? And we're seeing obviously the way currencies work, cryptocurrency. There's a lot changing on a lot of new things, how we deal with monetary and tax policies, but not just in this country, but across the world. I think what we can tell folks is, again, work closely and diligently on your returns and taxes and issues, and make sure that you're getting the best advice you can on how to address not just the taxation, but the answering of questions on tax forms and so forth.
And the best advice from Mr. T. Scott Tufts. You can call him always at 877-647-7887. Again, 877-647-7887. Or you can email him at stufts@cplspa.com. That's stufts@cplspa.com. And if you want to receive constantly our episodes and be notified, just hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel, and you can receive those episodes. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thank you.